So thank you, Robert, for this introduction, and thank you, you and Joel, for giving me the opportunity to give a talk. So I'm very pleased to work with Laszlo Moreira in this, and with Arne Winterhoff. And what also it is nice to be not the last speaker, but the penultimate speaker, is that I can take advantage of the talks of Thomas Stoll, the very nice talk on the Rödin-Shapiro function and the generalization of Rödin-Shapiro sequences, and also the talk of this morning of Manfred Madrich on the sum of digits. So before speaking about finite fields, I will do a small introduction of problem involving digits for the integers, because it was our initial motivation to switch to finite fields. So I hope that everything is, you can read very well the slide. So I will give us very few results on the digits of some sequence of integers. So I fix a basis j bigger than 2, and so we can write the digits of n ej, and then the sum of digits is the sum of the coefficient ej. And 10 years ago, Mauduit and Rivard solved the famous conjectures of Gelfand. Gelfand said these conjectures in the late 60s. So the idea is that if we have we can guess that there are some independence between the digit properties of the integers and their multiplicative properties or other arithmetic properties. And so I call these two results, for me it was the Mauduit-Rivard revolution, because after these two results, it was the beginning of many very nice results, and they give a lot of nice ideas. So if we look, for example, of the digit of the primes, and as I made some, perhaps it is m coprimes with g minus 1, sorry, as in the talk of Manfred this morning, it is g. So they prove that there is a good, the sum of the primes, of digits of the primes are good, distributed in arithmetic progressions, and also the same for the sum of digits of the squares. So after that, there are a lot of very nice work. So here I will quote only two sort of works. So the ellipsific primes, so that is primes with missing digits. So Maynard proved that, for example, in basis 10, there are infinitely many primes without the digit 9. And so some 5 years ago, Bourgain proves that there are many positive proportion, in fact, of primes with a proportion of pre-assigned digits. And then Cathy Swanepoel generalized these results to all bases, and furthermore, she provided some explicit admissible values for the ratio of pre-assigned digits. So in many talks with digits, we speak on the two famous sequences, the 2 Morse and the Rödin-Shapiro. So yesterday, Thomas Stoll introduced the Rödin-Shapiro as a sequence on -1 on 1. Today it will be 0 on 1. So each day the difference. So the 2 Morse sequence, it is -1 on 1. It is 1 if the it is 0 1. Sorry, it is 0 if the sum of digit is even, and 1 if the sum of digit of n is odd. And the Rödin-Shapiro, it is we count the number of consecutive one in the binary expansion, and if the number of binary of consecutive 1, so the 1 in the expansion is even, then we put the value 0, and if it is odd, we put the value 1. So these two sequences are automatic sequence. And what it is known is that the automatic sequence are a very low complexity. So the complexity, if we look at the infinite word with all the form with all the terms of this sequence, so we have a sequence of 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, and so on, and then we would like to find the number of words of 3 letters, for example. How many are 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, and so on. And when k is big, and so we would like to find how many different words of length k are there in this sequence. And for these two sequences, automatic and two-Morse sequence, this number is less than a constants times k. But what it is remarkable, if we look not at the sequence Tn, but Tn square, the situation is completely different. Then we can find almost every word. And so Dremota, Mauduit, and Riva prove that the two-Morse sequence along squares is normal. And later, Clemens Müllner also obtained proves that the Rudin-Shapiro sequence along squares is normal. And what it is also remarkable in these two works is that it is not these results are not only for two-Morse and Rudin-Shapiro sequence, but for any generalized sequence like that, like digital sequences. So now, we understand now the situation for the primes, for the squares, and mainly for the second degree polynomials. But what can we do for higher polynomials? So here there are still a lot of open questions. So as Manfred quoted this morning, Girard and I obtained 15 years ago the first results for the distribution of polynomial values in arithmetic progression. And 5 years later, around, Thomas Stoll improved our work. So he proved that if we take P, a coefficient with integer coefficient, a polynomial, with integer coefficients of degree bigger than 3, then the number of n, so we take A and M as general, we take M coprime with J minus 1, and the number of n's such that the sum of digits of P of n satisfies this congruence is bigger than this. And recall that in the talk of Manfred, Girard and I, our exponent was 2 divided by the degree, the d factorial, where d is the degree of P. So it is a very significant improvement. And so I recall also that another result mentioned in the talk of Manfred is that when the base G is large enough, J is prime, we have Michel Dremota, Christian Mauduit, and Joël Riva gave an asymptotic formula for such things. So the basis must be large. Large depends on the degree of P, but it is. So we say that we don't know, we don't understand all the situation, but we have still some good results. Thus, there are some open problems. What can we say for the two-Morse with the cubes? The Rudin-Shapiro sequence for the cubes, and also what can we say for the polynomial values of with the fixed sum of digits? So when the degree of P is equal to no, sorry. And so all these questions give for András and me the idea to switch to another context where the life is more easier. It is important actually now to have a life easier. And so we wanted to look at such questions in finite fields. So to do that, it would we have to give a definitions of digits in finite fields, and there is a natural way to do that. So we take Q power of prime P, and then the finite field FQ, we choose a basis B1 beta R, a basis of EQ over FP. Then if we take a Xi in FQ, it has a representation in this basis. And so the coefficients Xi are in FP, so we can call them the digit of Xi. For example, if we take alpha a primitive element, then Xi has this writing, and so we can see that it looks like this extensions of Xi. So it looks like the basis extension in base alpha, for example. So the sum of digits now, it is the sum of the coordinates of the coefficient, and thus we can study the sum of digits of polynomial values. And here we can do everything. So what we can, well, everything perhaps it is, but we can do a lot of things. Sorry. So we take f polynomials of degree n with n coprime with q, and c a given element of fp. And we would like to count the number of Xi in FQ such that the sum of digits of f of, oh, sorry, here it is a Xi. The sum of digits of f of Xi is equal to C. So it is natural to guess that this result doesn't depend on C. So all these sets have the same cardinality. Thus, the cardinality of the set, we can guess that it is FQ divided by P. So P to the R-1. And it is, we prove this result. So after this result, there was many nice improvement and generalizations by various authors. So here, sorry, in advance, I probably forgotten some names. So Christian Mauduit, András Sarkozy, and me, we study such problems, but with ellipsific polynomial values, so with missing digits.
Yes? Just a question of Régie de la Bretèche. What does normal mean? Maybe you can answer it.
Yeah. Yes, because I switched the definition of normal. So I come back to the slide. Here, it is a definition of normal. I switch here. So if you fix, so you look at your sequence of 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, and you fix a word of length k. So we fix C0, ck minus 1 of 0 and 1. And then you count the number of occurrences of this sequence. When I is less than n, you take the limit and you obtain that. Okay.
Thank you, he says, and thank you also from my side.
Yes, thank you, Regis. And now, so here now it's okay. I'm usually when I give a talk speaking too fast. I'm sorry for that, but it is okay now. Other question? No. So it is. So here it is. For example, the starting results of András and me. And we were very pleased after that to see that many other people work on these problems. And so there was with Christian, we studied the problems with missing digits. And then Gabdulin and independently Dittmann, Helsworth, and Sparlinski improved significantly our results because with Christian and András, we have the set of missing digits was quite small, and they were able, when in the particular case of power, to how to say that, to discard more digits. And there are also many interesting work of Kathy Swanepoel. So what for example, she generalized our results. So sorry, I go to the previous slides. Instead taking one polynomial f, she took several polynomials, and she obtained analogous results for several polynomials. So the joint distribution of of the sum of digits of several polynomials in FP, and also she obtained results for values with period digits, and so on. So I recommend all these papers. And also a little different, but not so far, Porritt studies the number of irreducible polynomials over finite fields whose coefficients satisfy some restrictions, so in FP. And what it is common with all these proofs that we switch to character sums, and then because we can say the digits, detect the digit with character sums, and then we apply a Veil's bound for character sums. This is why here we have a square root cancellation, square root of q. There are also other results of character sums applied in different works of, and we also use combinatorics ideas. Sorry, I made the wrong Voila. Sorry. So now I come to the Rudin-Shapiro for finite fields. So I used in the previous slide the definition of the Rudin-Shapiro sequence with the digits. So in the talk of Thomas Stoll yesterday, there was other definitions. And here, a natural way to adapt these definitions to finite fields, it is to study the behavior of the product of two consecutive digits. So we take C in FQ, and we write C like that, xi, and then we do the summation of the xi plus 1. So it is our Rudin-Shapiro function today. Now, so the idea is to study the distribution of this function at polynomial value. So we consider a polynomial f, and C an element of Fp, and we are interested by the xi in Fq such that R of f of C is equal to C. And as before, there are no obstruction of that, so we shall guess that the cardinality of this set, it is the cardinality of Fq divided by P. So that we prove here. So if D is the degree of the polynomial f, C in Fp, then the cardinality of this set minus the expected value here, and if we do, we can find a constant C depending only on D and R, such that this is less than P to the 3R plus 1 divided by 4 minus a correcting quantity, which is depends on the fact if R is even or odd and C is equal to 0 or not. We will see in the proofs that there will be some difference, some complication where R is odd and C is equal to 0. So perhaps sometimes of you have remarked that our bond is not so good as the previous one. Here we have 3R and divided by 4, so 3/4 of R. And in the previous ones, we have R over 2. So it is because the tools are different than the works, the previous result with András. But the method can be applied to the problem I studied with András on the polynomial values in the particular case of powers. And so we have a small improvement. So with András, we have here, and here we have R minus 1 divided by 2. That's all right. So before going to the proof for the general case, I will begin with an easy case. It is a case when f is a permutation polynomials. In the case, f is thus a bijection between fq and fq. So to count the f of xi with the Rudin, it is the same that to count the xi without f. So in fact, it is this cardinality is easier. It is only that, and that it is easy to count by recursion from process, because here we can separate if this quantity x r minus 1 is equal to 0, then we are in the previous case. We can apply the hypothesis of recurrence, and if x index r minus 1 is not 0, when we can fix arbitrary values of x1, x2, and so on, and then it gives xr. So we have easily this formula. So now we can I will begin the proof of the general case. So the first idea is to do as before, to try to switch to layers and exponential sums. But see that here the session is more complicated. So what it is very useful in the concept of digits in finite fields, it is to detect the digits with the trace function. So I introduced the Frobenius, so to psi out xi to the p. And what we will do here, it is to extend this function polynomials. So if we take a polynomials of fu in R variables, the Frobenius of these polynomials, it will be the same polynomials, but with the coefficient, the Frobenius acts on the coefficients of the polynomials. So phi of xi is still xi, so only the coefficients are changing. And then for the trace, it is the usual here. It is so xi to the p, xi to the p to the p, donc xi to the p square, and so on, xi to the p to the r minus 1. Next, with this trace function, we can use a dual basis, delta 1, delta dr of b, such that the trace of delta I beta j is equal to 1 if the two index I and j are equal, otherwise it is 0. So if we take an element of fq with this writing, also with the digits x1, xr, then to detect the digit in the I position, it is sufficient to compute the trace of delta I with xi. So that the Rydin-Shapiro function becomes a sum like that. So if we were looking at the sum of digits, we wouldn't have this one, we will only have something of degree 1 in the trace. And then we can so write like this, if we take the exponentials, like characters. And the Weil bond applies directly. But here we have two traces, so the situation is more complicated, and so we have to work more. And the idea is to transform this expression with to express this expression with a polynomial. So it is done in the next slide. So recall that we have trace with the delta I and then the trace with the delta a plus 1. So what we can fact, you recall that the trace, it is a summation, trace of say c plus c to the p and so on. So we open this this expression, we do some computation. I won't write it here, but if we open these two traces, we arrive at this complicated polynomial, but a polynomial in several variables, in R variables. So the variables x1, xr was in fact corresponds to the digits of xi. And the coefficients depend on the dual basis. And here we recognize during the Rydin-Shapiro function. When f is of degree d, we can prove that the corresponding capital F polynomials is of degree d. It is natural here, degree d, and we can check that at least one coefficient is not 0. So what can we do? Now we have a polynomials with many variables, so we can try the Weil bonds. So we can detect these things equal to C by character sums. Then we have a lot of, some exponential sums. And we can see perhaps if we can Weil's bond to obtain cancellation on XR. But unfortunately, if the Weil bond is only for one variable and we will only win square root of P, this is not sufficient. So we have to win cancellation in all variables x1, xr. Thus, there is another very general result. It is Deligne bond. So Deligne bond gives a square root cancellation, but there is a difficulty in Deligne's bond is that there must be no singular point in the variety defined by f of x1 xr is equal to 0. That is, that if we look at the 0 of that and the 0 of all partial derivatives, then we are not able to find a common 0 of all this equation. And this condition must hold in an algebraic closure of Fp. And unfortunately, it doesn't work in our case. So what we used, it is the Houellebecq theorem. It is a generalization of Delign's bond. So I will present it here now. So we take the algebraic closure of Fp, and capital F is the polynomials in R variables, and so we look at the singular locus of F, that is the set of the common 0 of F and all the partial derivatives. Voilà. It is at the singular. Voilà. So the Houellebecq says that if we take Q of degree capital D, QD, the homogeneous part of degree D, and we suppose that we can control the dimension of the singular locus of Q and QD. So we suppose that it is less than, say, S. Then the number of zeros of Q in Fp to the R satisfies this following. Here it is the expected term, because we will work, so the cardinality here is P to the R. So we have one condition, so we can say that one variable, so we divide by P, and then we have that. So when S is equal to -1, it means that the condition is -1, so like that. This gives the Deligne results. And for us, you recall, our bond was so I will go to. So now our work is to prove that for the polynomial here, this polynomial here, is to prove that the dimension is to obtain a bound of the dimension of these two quantities. This is the object of the two lemmas. So perhaps there are many things. So what we prove, so we are interested with the polynomials f minus c, and we can bound the dimension of the singular locus by, roughly speaking, r divided by 2. It is mainly that, and so we have to put -1 or so, that when it depends when r is even, r odd, and so on. So if we put this result, we have r divided by 2. I go back to the previous things. So here we have r plus r divided by 2. It means 3r divided by 4. And so I come back again in the result, sorry, here. Here it is a 3r divided by 4. Okay. So I come back to the lemma. So now, on the rest of the talk, I will try to give the proof of this lemma 2, which was the main part of our work. So sorry, I will come back to the polynomial again. So here. So you see that these polynomials, the shape is not very pleasant, but what it is natural to do is to do a change of variable. That is to call this variable yj and this one yk. So we will replace all the x1, x2, xr with y0, yr, and so on. So it is a change of variable here. So here it is, as I said, the yi. And what it is nice is that the inverse transformation is easy. So thanks for the dual basis, we can inverse here easily, and we can write all the x in terms of the y. And now, if q is the corresponding polynomials in the y's, so then Q and QD are still have degree 2. This is the homogeneous part. And the corresponding polynomials is the shape is more simpler. So we have the same coefficient FD. We have some independent of YK and so on. So what is important is that this transformation is regular. So to compute the singular locus of F minus C or FD, it is the same to compute the singular locus of Q and QD. And so it is good because it is simpler to compute the partial derivatives of all this quantity. So we compute all the derivative. And so we have two factors here. We have this one, so the derivative of F evaluated on YL, and the other one. So it is natural to make to make a union, to write the singular locus of the union of the different variety VL cup CL, where in V we collect the zero of this, and in C we collect the 0 and C. So what it is in VL, we still have this condition, and we look at the index L so that this one is 0, and in CL we look at this when it is the partial derivative. And so what it is nice in CL is here that this condition here involves only one variable YL. So recall that F is a polynomial in one variable. FL, it is the same polynomials but with the Frobenius. And so what we are sure that here in FP bar, this equation has only finite solution, only at most D solution. So the number of YL is finite. And so the dimension of the variety CL, we can bound it by the cardinality of L, because for the other variable, there are only finite possibilities. Well, we would say, oh yes, I wanted to say, here it is dim, sorry, I come back. So we have to compute the dimension of that. So for the homogeneous part, it is like that. So what we can say is that the dimension of this quantity is less than the maximum of the dimension of this quantity. And here we have an intersection. So the dimension of this intersection is less than the minimum of the dimension of VL and the dimension of CL. This is why we have this first line here. So we need to bound this one, to bound this one. So we have already bound this one. And then we make some comparison, we compute, and we will have the given results. So for CL, it's not too complicated. For VL, it is less direct. So what we put, we have this result here, the dimension of VL, it is R minus capital cardinality of L minus 1 when C is different from 0, and it is a little bigger when C is equal to 0. So the next slide, so I am going fast. So the next slide is quite a computation. So before going it, I will try to give you the idea of the proof. So you see that if we take all the index 0, 1, etc., then the cardinality of L, it is R. So we are in this situation là, when L is all the set, the dimension is -1 when C is different to 0, and at most 1 or 0, at most 0 when C is equal to 0. 1, sorry. Here we have 1. What is the idea is that in this case, when C is not 0, in fact, VL is empty. And it is possible to prove that because we will see we will have some complete sums. We will use some orthogonality principle, so between the dual basis and the base B, and it will be possible to compute quite explicitly VL when L is a full set. When L is not the full set, we will see that it consists to remove some equation. And when we remove one equation, the consequence is that the dimension grows at most at 1. This is why here we have minus L plus 1. So this is the idea of the proof. Now some details are given in the next slide. So we take an element in VL. Perhaps you have forgotten the precise expression of VL, but you recall it was this polynomial here. Here there was xk, and here it was the coefficient formed before. So we have for all RL all this equation. So what can we do? It is to do some summation. So we sum each equation, but we insert an element in the basis B. What it is nice is that here we have complete sum, and we have some, since the base B and delta are dual, so we can compute with the expression of the coefficient ALK, even if you have forgotten the precise shape of that, so you can recall it was quite like that. And then what it is nice here, we have some trace function, and here you recall, here it is 0 when m is not I, and it is 1 when m is equal to I, and the same here. So this is why we have in simpler things, we have only that. And in the beginning, when m is equal to 1, so here we have delta 2, but we don't have this, and in the end, we have only this. So when we compute, so finally, we have this expression, and then you see, if we compute, it means that all these expressions must be equal to 0. So the beginning must be equal to 0, the end term must be equal to 0. So here, if we put here, we have the index 2 is equal to 0. So if we put the 2 here, yes, here we will have the 4 equal to 0, the 6 equal to 0. All the even are equal to 0. And when R is even, this one is odd. So if we do the same, this the last odd is 0, the previous last odd is 0, or all the odd are 0. So when R is even, all these quantities are equal to 0. Now, you recall it is quite our YL. So if we do the inverse transformation, we deduce all the FK of eta k are 0. Then we put in the initial equation, see, if all of these people are 0, then if you look at the polynomials, we should have 0, but unfortunately, 0 is forbidden, we should have C. So when C is equal to 0, it is not compatible, and the variety is empty. When C is equal to 0, so it is all these equations are compatible, and so the number of solutions is less than the number of roots of all these polynomials. So this is why we have d to the r. So I have almost finished. For odd r, the situation is more complicated because here we have something even, and here also we have something even. So only the even parts are 0. We don't, but for the odd parts, we have some relation. So we can see that these things is all the even things are proportional. Only there is some -1 to something perturbation. So we can, all the things are not 0, but we can have an explicit formulation of all these quantities depending on the parameter lambda. And again, if we insert that in Q, we find that it must be 0. So the variety is still empty when C is not 0. And when C is equal to 0, we can compute. And we have so this sort of equation. And when we fix when we fix a lambda, we have a finite number of solutions corresponding eta 0, eta r. So the variety is of dimension at most 1. And so this last slide was perhaps technical and perhaps you didn't catch everything. But what you have to remember is finally we under only the shell case when L complete. And then to obtain the other case, it means that it is sufficient to, we use the fact that if we have a variety defined by several polynomials, and we know the dimension of the variety, if we suppress one polynomial, we increase the dimension of the variety at most 1, So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.